Hi peeps, and welcome to another review from Class 47 Peter, and in today's review, as promised, like I said in the last review, this review is going to be the Class G2A, also known as the Super D. This model came from Worley, along with the Western and that free wagon, as mentioned in the last review video, and it's also been mentioned on Twitter and Facebook as well. And this model came from the Invicta rail stand, as I've also mentioned before, which this stand was opposite the stand that I bought the Western from. The G2A is something I've been meaning to get hold of for ages now, and so one of the things I wanted to get from Worley was a G2A, and so when I got to the Invicta rail stand and saw this, I just had to have it. And this model is in the LMS black livery, which is the one I wanted, because in my own personal opinion, I think the LMS black livery is the nicest livery that the G2A has been seen in, and I think it's one of the best liveries that you can get the G2A in, and it looks stunning. Right, so without further ado, let's get the box open. So first of all, we're going to remove the box sleeve, which is on quite tight. This is the typical Bachmann packaging that we're all used to by now, the plastic packaging. And on the back of the box we have the brief history of the G2A, which I'm not going to go into, but it's there so you can pause and read it if you want to. I'm not going to stop you. Next, we simply take out the plastic packaging. When we can finally get it out, that is. There we go, it's now out of the box. And we can now have a look at the instructions. So now moving on to the paperwork. First of all, we have the usual thing that we get in the boxes now, the collected club flyer, which I have rejoined. Again, you already know about that, but I've rejoined it. This is the leaflet for you to fill in. It tells you what you get with the club when you join, basically. You've also got the product warranty service request, and the maintenance and care. But we've seen that before, nothing too special. Then we have the instruction manual, which we have the exploded diagram of the G2A. And this is basically, so if you lose a part, or have a part that's missing or gets damaged or whatever, you can just basically order a new one. It also tells you where to fit the details as well. And then on the back you do have the instructions for this model, which is basically the running in, the curves it's suitable for, the body removal, which you can remove the tender and the loco body, also DCC fitting and all the usual stuff. Next we remove the plastic casing, and even at this stage you can see just how stunning this model is. So once the plastic casing has been removed, we can now get to the detail pack before we open the packaging up to get the model out of, which the little bag of details is sellotaped onto the packaging. So in this little bag of detail we don't get much details, but what we do get are a couple of brake pipes to fit on both the tender and the loco, and we also get the guard irons, which go just underneath the buffer beam, or under the running plate rather, on the front of the locomotive. So I shall be adding these on later on. Then with the details put to one side, we can now simply remove the model from the packaging, and to do that it's quite simple. Just undo the box flap and lift up the top of the packaging. And one thing you need to do when removing this loco is, because that the tender and the loco are connected, you have to lift them out at the same time, because it's safer to do that way. As you can see, that box flap there is quite annoying, but that's just something you get with the packaging, but I'm not complaining either way. And so we just lift the model out of the packaging, and then we simply do the clip to the box back up, and then we just take the packaging to one side, and we're now free to have a look at the model in detail. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, as I always do in these reviews, is the weight, and this is a very, very heavy model. But the weight is good because that's what we want, because as it is a freight locomotive, it needs to be able to pull quite lengthy trains and wagons, or however long you want the trains to be. But the weight is important because the weight is there so it can pull trains no matter how long or small they are, because without the weight this model would not be able to pull a single wagon. That is why it's important, because the weight provides the traction, and that is why you no longer see traction tyres anymore. And in this case you've got the weight of the mechanism, which adds to a fair bit of weight anyway, but also what Bachmann have done, I think, with this particular model is that various parts are made out of metal while others are made out of plastic to compact as much weight as possible into the model. And also I do believe there's weight inside the tender as well, which is a lot of weight to the model. Moving on to the detail now, this model does have sprung buffers, as you can see, so if you like the sprung buffers they'll make you happy, and they're made of metal as well. I don't have care for sprung buffers, as I've said loads of times before, but they're there anyway. We also have an M coupling with the slim tension lock coupling, so you can remove it and fit it with your own coupling if you want to. We also have a coupling hook on the front there, and you can just about make out the rivets on the buffer beam as well. We also have separately fitted lamp irons on the running board, as you can see, and under the smoke box door there, on the smoke box, you can see there's some nice detail there. There's a couple of rivets, and you also have those little bits of detail there as well, which are either side of the smoke box door, which in this case I do believe it's, well, they act as like steps so the crew can climb up to the top of the locomotive if they want to get up to the top and work on it or whatever. But it's there, and it's just like as it is there on reality, and it's a nice little bit of detail to have. Moving on to the smoke box door itself, we have separately fitted smoke box door darts, as well as a lamp iron just fitted just above the smoke box door there on the smoke box, and you can also see lots of rivets around the smoke box door there on the front of the smoke box. We also have a crisply printed shed code under the smoke box door darts, and this shed code reads 9D, and this is the shed code for Buxton, but it later became Newton Heath in the 70s. So it's either one of these two sheds, but obviously during the steam era it would have been Buxton, I'm guessing. Now there is something quite special about the smoke box door. If we just get a little cocktail stick, and you can see that the smoke box door does open on this model, which is a fantastic feature to have on these models. Now there isn't any detail inside the smoke box there, such as boiler tubes, which it would have been nice to see, but I still like the fact that the smoke box door opens, and this is now the 5th locomotive I have in my collection where the smoke box door opens. Now it's not a feature that needs to be on the model, but it's nice to have. I know I have said that I don't see the point in sprung buffers and opening doors and stuff like that, but in the case with the sprung buffers, you're only going to touch the sprung buffers when you're handling the model. You're never going to do it when the model is running, and I rarely mess about with the sprung buffers. And it's the same story with the opening doors really. Again, you're only going to touch them when you're holding the model, and again it's something I do rarely anyway. Although in the case of the 08s and the 09s you could put a driver hanging at the door there, but even so it's not something you can do with like a mainline diesel, and I don't think it's something most models tend to do. Whereas in the case of the opening smoke box doors, on shed you can have the smoke box door open and have a couple of loco crews on the locomotive, like working on the inside of the locomotive, like perhaps it's the end of the day for that particular locomotive and they're clearing the ash out of the smoke box. And so that is why I like the opening smoke box doors, and it would be nice if Bachmann did this more often on the models, because it's a great feature to have. So now we'll close the smoke box door back up and give it a gentle tap with the cocktail stick to make sure it shuts properly, and we are now free to continue with the review. you can just about see on the frames of the model that there are some rivet details there. They are a little bit hard to see, but they are there, and that's a great bit of detail to have because it makes the model look more realistic. So kudos to Bachmann for that. We now come on to the side rods of the model, and it's accurate, as with the real thing, because there's no outside cylinders, so there's no valve gear or any link motion or anything, it's just side rods, but I can't wait to see that moving. And also we have some footsteps there as well, which is always a great bit of detail to have. I also like the style of the wheels as well in terms of design, because on the G2As the design of the wheels is slightly different, as you see with other locomotives' wheels. They're not as much different as the bullied Firth Brown wheels on the bullied Pacifics and other bullied locomotives, but the design of the wheels on the G2As is slightly different in terms of detail, so it's great to see that Bachmann have got this feature right. And we also can't forget the sanding gear, which is made of metal, but do be careful with it because it can be a bit fragile. And also we have the cab steps there as well, as you can see, which I like how the cab steps are bent inward slightly, and that's true to the real locomotive, and it's good to see that Bachmann have got that right as well, because it's good to see that, and it looks a bit more interesting as well, as opposed to just having the cab steps just going straight down. Moving on to the cab, we have a small separately fitted metal handrail there, as you can just about see. We also have loads of rivets on the side of the cab, as well as what looks like a washout plug of some sort on the side of the cab. You've also got 7S crisply printed on the top of the cab, and the locomotive's running number 9376, and the style of the font they've used for the numbering is the correct one, which is what we want to see, and it's crisply printed as well. We also have the wheel arches as well for the locomotive, which is what this locomotive has in reality, and also we have a reversing lever there. We also have another part to the reversing lever mechanism, as you can see there. We also have a couple of sandboxes on the first two driving wheel arches, as you can see. You can also make out some pipework there as well on the side of the smoke box, and there is also some visible daylight under the boiler as well, along with a very small separately fitted metal handrail, and also you can just about see a spring behind the first driving wheel arch, which is a great bit of detail to have. Moving back to the smoke box, which on the side of the smoke box we do have quite a few rivets on there, which is always a great bit of detail to have, because it makes the models more realistic. We also have a nice chimney, and an accurate one as that, to the real locomotive. You could fit a smoke generator unit to the model if you wanted to, but that's not my thing, so I'm not going to bother. We also do have a separately fitted metal handrail that runs alongside the boiler and curves up and over the smoke box door, and also we have some pipework there running alongside the boiler. We also have some more finer pipework there, as you can see, with that little box detail just above that bit of pipework, and you have some thinner pipework, you know what I mean, that bends up around the boiler there. And that's a great bit of feature to have, that is. Great bit of detail, and it makes the model look more realistic. And again, if you look at the G2As, both the preserved one and the ones in pictures, they do have this detail. We also have a nice dome there in the middle of the boiler, and also you can just about see the boiler bands there as well on the boiler. We also have the separately fitted brass turned safety valves there on the what's basically the firebox, and it's a great bit of feature to have because, well, you need the locomotives to have the safety valves. They're there for a reason. And in the front cab windows we do have glazing in them as well, which is very realistic, and it's what we expect as well. And of course we have the whistle, which is separately fitted and by turned brass, which is what it's made out of, and also you have lots of rivets on the cab roof there. Now this loco is fitted with the tender back cab, and just like on the roof of this cab, like it does on the roof of the cab of the locomotive, there are rivets on the tender back cab, which adds to realism. And in the interior of the cab you have the detail parts that are painted. You've got the floor that's painted, and you've also got the gauges, the dials, the turning wheels, the regulator and the pipework. It's all painted, and it just looks fantastic, and it's a great bit of feature to see on these locos. And again, it adds to the realism as well, and it just looks superb. No other word for it. And we also have some detail there on the face of the tender there. Couple of turning wheels and a couple of storage units in there. None of it's painted, but then the detail on the front of the tender is not normally painted anyway. But it's there, and it's just fantastic. On the side of the tender you get not one but two separately fitted handrails there, just on the front of the tender, and also you have a couple of rivets around them as well. Then on the back of the tender back cab you have lots of rivets as well as glazing in the windows of the tender cab, and also you've got the guard irons on the windows as well, and it's just superb. Moving on to the top of the tender, you have quite a bit of detail. You have rivets as well as those bits of detail on the end of the tenders there. There's something for the crews to grab onto. You can see them on the end of the tender, one in each corner. And of course you have the water filler cap, which has rivets around it, and it doesn't open, but we don't really expect it to anyway. But it's there. On the tender you also have a separately fitted coal rail that you see on the other side of the tender, as you can just about see. And what I like about this is that it doesn't run all the way around the tender, it only runs to half of the tender at the front of the tender, and then it like bends inwards, and it's a great bit of detail to have. But you will see it closer later in the review when I look at the other side of the tender. But it's great, and it's there like it is on the real locomotive. It's great to have it on the model. We can't leave the coal load out in the tender. Now, I think it might be removable, but I'm not 100% certain, because I did try to remove it, and, well, using my fingernail, and it didn't come out. But it might be removable. But it does have that shiny finish to it, but that's because it's made of metal. And so what I think what they've done is, and this is what they have done on other models, is that the coal's made out of metal, so they act as weight, which is a clever idea. So there's basically weight inside the tender, but then the coal load is made of metal as well, which compacts more weight into it. And they've done this with the Johnson 3F, a model I don't own personally, but I do know that that model has it. And also the 4F with the Johnson tender does have the weighted coal load, and there are a couple of other models Bachmann have made as well that have this feature. But it doesn't stop you putting real coal load in the tender, it just means that you can cover the weighted coal load with real coal, and that is what I shall be doing. We also have loads of rivets on the side of the tender, and also you have the accurate LMS lettering, which is the style of the font. It's accurate and correct, and also they've got the colour of the font correct as well, which is important as well. You've also got the tender frames as well, which have a lot of detail on those as well. You got a step there at the front which bends inwards, which is a very interesting footstep that is. You've also got lots of rivets as well as the springs on the axle boxes, which is what we like to see. Then moving to the back of the tender, you have lots of rivets and separately fitted lamp irons. You've also got, again like on the front, a slim tension lock coupling that is NEM, rivets on the buffer beam, and a coupling hook there on the buffer beam. And just like on the loco, the tenders on the buffers are sprung, and again they're made of metal. Moving to the other side of the tender, again you have loads of rivets and the accurate styled font. And you can also see the coal rail on this side of the tender, as I said I'd show you earlier, and you can see it there. Again, it's a brilliant detail to have, and again you've got that footstep that bends inwards, which actually goes up to the axle box, and a very interesting footstep design as well. And again you've got separately fitted handrails and the same amount of detail on the tender frames as you have on the other side. Moving on to the other side of the loco now, The detail is more or less the same, but there are some detail differences that are not on the other side of the loco. The first obvious difference is the lack of the reversing lever on this side, but then again, in reality, the reversing levers are only on the one side of the loco, so it doesn't need to be on both sides. You also have pipework running just under the smoke box door there, and it runs on the front of the running board, from the back of the front lamp iron up to the front of the smoke box, and you only see it on this side, not on the other side, and it's a great bit of detail to have. This one sandbox is also slightly different as well to the others, but it's only something very subtle, but it's slightly different to the sandboxes on the other side. But apart from that, every other detail is pretty much the same. One detail that I can't leave out, and this is on both sides of the loco, is the brake blocks, which you get on the drive wheels, and they are also painted as well, which is a nice little touch. So now that we've covered the detail, we now come on to the running of the model. And as you can see, the model ran smoothly and faultlessly around the layout, which is what we want to see, because this is what we expect. We don't expect, and we shouldn't see, motors burning out, no stuttering or dithering movement or anything like that. This is how these models should perform first time and constantly throughout their use, basically. Expect them to run smooth, and that's what we want. We now come on to the loaded test run for the G2A, and you can see just why the weight is so important. As you can see, the G2A hauling this long rack of wagons around the layout without any problems at all. Also note that the wagon I got for free when I joined the Bachmann Collector Club at Worley is behind the locomotive, as I thought that would look good behind the locomotive, and also I wanted to feature it in this review. So overall, I cannot find a single fault with the G2A. I haven't even come across a small slight niggle with the model either. It's just a perfect model, it really is, and I highly recommend that you get one. Doesn't matter what your model or what livery you like, you have to get one, because they are just so superb. As you can see, the detail is just all fantastic. It's a very strong model, as you can see quite clearly, and it's a very smooth runner. So this is going to be another high scorer. So on that bombshell, I rate the G2A a 10 out of 10. This has been Class 47 Peter reviewing the Bachmann LMS livery G2A, and I'll see you again soon for the next review, whenever that is going to be, but until then, look after yourselves.